Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Wendell, and welcome to another Dolphin Financial Radio Show. Today, we're going to be talking about spending in retirement. There's a lot of people that are looking to retire, and they wonder, will my spending go up? Will my spending go down? What should I be thinking about? In fact, when I help people retire, which is what I do mostly every day, one of the most difficult questions I ask them is, what are you planning to spend when you retire? And the problem is, some people know exactly what they spend every day. Some people have no idea. But rarely do people truly understand what they're going to be doing in retirement because they've never done it before. Speaking of somebody that's never retired before, let's get him in here. There he is. Tony Shore's in the house and his microphone's muted, which is great. So the listeners
Well,
can't
no,
appreciate that, but the
I
viewers
was
can
just
see his mouth.
that was a purposeful pause to really
Ah,
I wanted to let the show breathe a little bit, make sure you had finished fully your introduction. I was waiting for more praise and accolades. I was just like,
yeah, you're not yet. You're not yet retired, Tony. That's what I
mhm,
said. And
mhm.
I don't know if you know anything about spending in retirement because you're not there. But I have a feeling you have some rules of thumb that you've heard, and I do want to talk about that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
notice my background. To the viewers, they could see, and to the listeners, they're like, "What are you talking about? My background." I have Tony. Do you know what this is? You know what this is. Yes. Yeah. Oh,
It's a cash
yeah.
register.
He's got all the
It's an old
sound effects.
timey. That's like 1800s probably, or early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Mm-hmm.
say.
That was when what is that over here? That was when 80 bucks or 90 bucks was quite a lot back then. Um, yeah, so it's a cash register. We're going to be talking about spending. I thought it would be appropriate to put an old cash register on, but you don't see these anymore. In fact, everything's swiped with the card now.
It's all
But
electronic touch.
here's the question I have for you to start off, Tony.
Okay.
Does spending go down as you age?
I would say yes until you get to a certain point in retirement where you need health care.
Now, when I tell the listeners that I didn't coach Tony on this one, I'm being disingenuous because he's starting to absorb over the years all the because he got that one right. He got that one right. Surprisingly, spoiler alert. Wow, Tony, you hit it
You were
right on
thinking
the
I'd
head.
get that one wrong, didn't you?
Because it's a yes or no question, and
Yeah.
you decided to take the middle road, which is what I always do. You're catching
Yes.
on. You're
Yes.
catching on, and that disturbs me.
Because
So
the answer is always it depends,
it's true.
right? I mean,
It's
isn't that
true.
always But I mean, come on, healthcare. I mean, if you need long-term care, you've never spent money like that in your life. I mean, 10 grand a month.
Yeah, we just did a show recently on long-term care costs
Yeah,
and how
it's crazy.
Minnesota is number one.
Yeah. Spendy here.
Yeah, so I'm going to reference another report, Tony. We've not seen this before. This is the Guide to Retirement 2022, JP Morgan Asset Management. The link is here for the viewers, but if you Google Guide to Retirement 2022 JP Morgan Asset Management, you'll find this report. It's really quite good. I'm going to share my screen in a moment and go through some of the key slides that I like. But have you ever heard of a rule of thumb about spending in retirement, Tony, over the years? I may have mentioned it.
I think the rule of thumb. Well, I've heard the rule of thumb about how much you'll need in retirement. You'll need 70% of your pre-retirement income, or it's 80. Okay.
Well, no, I think the rule of thumb was 80, but you're right. There's that rule of thumb. Okay, you're going to retire. I'm 65. Say I'm going to go on Medicare. I'm going to retire. Dan, I spend 100,000. What am I going to spend in retirement? And the rule of thumb has always been 80%. So you're going to spend 80,000 in retirement. The problem is, I don't know if it's accurate. I mean,
Well,
it's like all rule of thumbs.
First of all,
rules of thumb,
the difference between the week you're working and the next week when you've stopped working and it's your first week of retirement, you're going to take a 20% pay cut instantly. That's got to hurt.
Well, you got to think of it this way, Tony. One of the reasons why you see your spending go down, well, I don't know if it's called spending, but your savings goes down because right now a lot of people contribute a percentage of their income to their retirement plan.
Sure.
So when you stop with the income, that spending goes down too, in a way, because it's not spending, it's saving. Because you don't see it in your paycheck, it can almost
Right.
be classified as spending on
Sure.
your retirement. Um, but I think this rule of thumb um, needs to be addressed. So what I want to do is I want to see if I can share my screen for the viewers to talk, and I'm going to reference this again, the JP Morgan Asset Management study. Before I share it, because I'm looking for it now. I actually picked a few slides from it, just a few. Before I share it, I want to say that there is no right answer. So Tony, you know my tricks, but you're right. I often say, "Hey, what's the answer? It depends." And in this case, it really does. So we're going to use some generalities from this, and let's see if I can bring this up. No, I can't seem to
Sure.
bring it up for whatever reason. Let me try something different here.
Technology.
Yeah, technology. I'll get it. You figure by now I'd figure this out, but they constantly make changes to it. Okay, here we go. So, income replacement. Do you see that, Tony?
Yep, I see it.
Okay. Income replacement income replacement needs vary by household income. Okay.
Okay.
So, I want you to focus on this top line here that starts at 98% and works its way down to 72. Do you see that?
Yep.
That top line above the bar chart. The bar chart, so what we're looking at is it shows you different income levels. So it starts at $30,000 pre-retirement income all the way up to $300,000 pre-retirement income. And what the top line says, what percentage of that income do you need in retirement? What percentage of your income do you need to replace? And what this says is if you're making 30,000, you need 98% of that income in retirement.
Oh, wow. Okay. I see
But
where
if
we're
you're
going
making
here.
300,000, you only need 72% of your income. So what you could see is the more money you make, the less you'll need to replace on a percentage basis, not a dollar basis. So this rule of thumb about 80% of your retirement income you need to replace, that doesn't seem to match up with the data until you're making $150,000, which is well above what the average retiree makes, even a
I
retired
see.
family, right?
Right.
So the chart shows, Social Security as a percentage of your income. That first gray bar, which you could see at the top, talks
Mhm.
about changes in expenditures, taxes, and pre-retirement savings. That's what I was talking about. As you retire, your taxes theoretically go down, and the amount you're saving into retirement goes down to zero, basically, for a lot of people. So that
Sure.
um, that that piece of money leaving you for taxes and savings is gone.
Yeah.
But you still see that's only a small portion for people making $30,000.
Mhm.
So the amount they have to make up from private sources increases. And that increases over time. The more money you make, the less you're going to get from Social Security. That makes sense. But I think it's important to note here, this top bar is what I want to say is, if you're making 70,000, you still need 92% of your income. If you're making
Wow.
100,000, you need 86. So this 80% rule, I'm not
I
buying
was
it.
I was actually closer to correct as far as your income, Dan. You would be closer to only needing 70%
Yeah,
according to this chart.
right. Yeah, right. Tony, you've forgotten. Like you, I have 3 children, and mine are not yet in college. So, yeah, right, right. Um, so, uh, when does this 80% rule change? Well, that's the question. It depends on how much you're making. Now, let's talk about when spending actually slows down. And this is what you were talking about. You've referenced this before, Tony. The active go-go phase, the slow go, and the no-go. Can you see
Yep.
this chart on here?
Hey, there's a chart that has that on it.
Yeah, this is from
I always
JP
thought I made
Morgan.
that up, but
Yeah,
I guess
right.
not.
See? Copyright case. Here we go,
Yeah.
lawyers.
Yeah.
This is JP Morgan Asset Management actually references the Prosperous Retirement Guide, Prosperous Retirement Guide to the New Reality by Michael Stein from 1998. He
Oh,
came
wow.
up with this, right? So you got active phase, go, and this is retirement now. 65 to 75 is your go phase. 75 to 85 is your slow go phase. And then 85 and older is your no-go phase.
Yeah.
So you see what happens. They show in his theory, your spending gets reduced when you hit 75.
Sure.
It makes sense though, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it.
No, yeah, I've always heard that middle period, the slow go years, are where you spend the least, because of healthcare in that last final phase.
Right. So the no-go phase is like, well, why am I spending more? That's because of that long-term care, healthcare goes up.
Yeah.
So those are
Now, if you
expenses
don't
that you
need,
don't normally have.
if you could somehow remain healthy or be my grandpa Bob,
Right.
you'd follow the blue chart there, and it would keep going down. But unfortunately, for most, it's going to skyrocket there, like the little purple area shows, because for our audio listeners, sorry about this, but
Yeah,
we're
it's
looking at a
showing
chart.
right, and it's showing a 20 to 30% reduction in spending starting at age 75 and working its way
Yep.
down to 85, and that's when there's a potential huge bump back up because of healthcare and long-term care.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show this slide not only because it's pretty good to show you how some people can see the different phases of spending, but also because to show you that you didn't make that up, Tony. You didn't build that. That was
Right.
someone else's. Okay. Now here's another chart. Again, this is great for the listeners, right? They get
Sure. They're learning a lot here.
to average annual household spending by age. Now, I want to put a caveat in here. If you look at the fine print there, it says households with investable wealth of 1 million to 3 million. Okay. So these are going to be above average households when it comes to their net worth. Although a lot of people have housing wealth, equity. So $1 million is not what it used to be, right?
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
Okay. So if
Not
you
that I'm
look
anywhere near having that, but yes, it's not what it used to be.
again, kids, I did a show. I'll put that up here on why, if you want to retire rich, don't have children. Literally, we did a show on that. Okay. So if you look at this chart, Tony, it shows you ages 45 all the way to age 95. And again, you see a similar chart. It looks like people are spending the most when they're in their 50s. Age 50 to 54 is when you spend the most. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I mean, you're in this range, Tony. You're in this range. Do you feel like you've peaked in spending, or has your spending slowed down?
It has not slowed down. Just
Again,
being
kids.
honest.
Again, kids. No.
Yeah.
But you can see this, like the most spending is done in your 50s. And then you see it taper off in your 60s, 70s, and then it bottoms out at about 80s, early 80s, and then it starts creeping up again. And this chart shows you a nice colored where different categories of spending. And you could see that in the 80, when it starts to creep back up again, what's creeping up? Housing. So that's going to be long-term care, potentially housing. And you see healthcare creep up.
Yeah.
And you see transportation creep, start to go down. Everything seems to go down, including food and beverage, as you age.
Yep.
Why is that? Housing doesn't seem to go down too much. That kind of stays level, but
'Cause the
healthcare
younger
ever increases.
Yeah, the
Healthcare
younger
is
you
the
are,
only one,
the more you wanna go out and do things and eat out, and yeah, I see that.
right?
Yeah.
So they're saying the annual household spending is peaks at about 114,000, and then it hits the bottom at 77,000 when you hit age 80. And then it creeps back up again. So again, there's this chart. Here's another one, Tony. Changes in spending versus partially and fully retired households. So again, these are people that have a lot of wealth between 1 million and 3 million, but it shows you the same type of thing for people that are ages 60 now. Now we've narrowed the timeline here, 60 to 95. And it just narrows in and focuses. And when you hit your 80s, that's when most people bottom out with their
Yep.
spending.
Yep.
So does this is this a reality for my clients? Does it slow down at age 75? Is that the number? Now, I think for the silent generation, this shifted maybe 5 years sooner, meaning
Mm.
it slowed down at 70 because life expectancies are higher. So people that are in at 65 right now, when my grandmother turned 65, I guess that would have been in the 80s. That
Sure.
was big, right? That was like, wow,
Yeah.
65. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, you're ancient,
Yeah.
right? Again, I had a skewed perspective because I was
Mm.
young.
Yeah.
But even now, someone hitting 65, I don't view them as ancient. In fact, as ancient, most of my clients are early 60s and they are fit. A lot of them are more fit than I am. They're very active and it's a different lifestyle now. I think 75 seems to be the point where people start to slow down in my general guidance, and the data is showing that.
Yeah.
Um,
For me, it was age 40. That's when I really started to slow down and
right. Physically, you're talking. Right. Mentally, you're sharp as a tack, Tony. Don't let
oh
anyone tell
yeah.
you
Oh
otherwise.
yeah. Sharp as a tack.
So, again, if spending is going to decrease with age, which a lot of people say it does it creep back up again? Yes, early 80s. Now, another caveat here is what I say. A lot of my clients, they say this chart shows a steady decline once you retire, and I disagree with that. I often see a flat line or an increase in the early years of retirement. I see people retire and do the things that they were holding off on doing. They
Mm,
do the trips, they renovate the house, they buy the car. It's a big expense right after retirement.
yeah.
And I think that's more of a reality for people. The problem is a lot of people wanna do that. They wanna do that retirement type party. They wanna go say they retire at 65, they wanna spend the next 5 years doing all those cool things because they feel like, "I'm young enough, I'm healthy, let's get it done."
Let's
And so
travel.
right. So, I think that the chart is wrong. Again, this is averages, so you gotta factor in everybody, but I think the chart is a little wrong compared to at least my clientele. My clientele, it goes up after retirement, much to the surprise of many, and then it starts to taper down.
Yeah. That makes more sense. Yeah, I think when people first retire, that's when they're going for it, and they're gonna spend more because 'cause they're gonna do things that they didn't do while they were working that cost money, like travel.
Exactly. Exactly. And very important piece of creating a retirement income plan is factoring in that increased spending early because that really does hurt when it comes to what's known as sequence risk. I'll put the video up here. We've done shows on sequence risk. And if you're thinking to yourself, Dan, you're making sense to me. I do want to spend early in my retirement. The big new worry and fear when it comes to financial will be sequence risk. And you'll probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's very important to factor it in. And basically, in a nutshell, it means if you're going to spend early in retirement, that's okay, but you have to be wary of the stock market crashing during that early spending because you're going to fundamentally potentially be pulling out assets as it's coming down, which can hurt you in the long run. So you have to be very strategic about spending early. You don't just want to do it willy-nilly because you could really destroy your retirement.
Quickly deplete your retirement funds a lot
Right.
faster than you plan on it because of market volatility, which we've seen a lot. So you do have to
Yes.
be careful. But you're illustrating a point. That right there is why it's so important for people to work with a financial services professional like yourself. And if somebody's watching this or listening to this podcast, they need to pick up the phone and give you a call because you'll meet with them once or twice, and there's no cost or obligation for that, and go over where they're at and where they need to be. And then if they like you, you like them, and you show them how you could help them avoid the sequence of return risks, hedge against inflation, rising
Mhm.
prices, and market volatility, then they might say, "Oh, wow, yeah, I'm gonna be able to be a lot more sound in retirement if I work with a financial services professional." Or they might say, "I'm just fine." Or you might tell them, "Hey,
Yeah.
you're doing good." So I think it's important, though, to get that second opinion on where you're at from a professional.
and early, because
Yes.
like, we all know that it makes
Vote
sense.
early and
Hey,
vote often.
if you save early, like when you're in your 20s, it
Yep.
helps you in later. If you spend smartly in early part of retirement, or I should say this, if you spend incorrectly in early retirement, that could be hugely detrimental,
Yes.
compounding effect later. And I'm not saying not to spend. I'm
Right.
saying you have to be smart about it. And not just smart spending, smart investing early, because you got to make sure
There
you're
you
not.
go.
And later
Yeah.
in this report, and I'm not going to go over it today, they came up with a term. I don't know if they came up with it. Maybe you came up with it, Tony. I've never heard it before. It was called dollar cost ravaging your
Ah,
your
I've never heard. That's
right?
funny.
I think we're gonna
Dollar
do a show
cost
on it.
ravaging.
We'll
I
we'll do a
love
show on
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
So I would be remiss to talk today. We're in 2022, early 2022, if I didn't mention inflation. Okay, because we just have the
Retirement
highest
costs
inflation.
money.
Retirement
Yes,
costs money, Dan.
it does cost money, and your money doesn't get as much as it used to. We're at 40-year highs for inflation, right? And we've done shows on
Terrible.
inflation. I'll put those up at the top. Inflation, we talked about it, but I want to talk about inflation for retirees, because there's a lot of discussion about whether or not retirees face the same inflation fears or have the same pain as working people. And this study suggests that they don't. I want you to focus on this bottom chart here, Tony. Annual average inflation by spending category. It shows you 1982 to 2020, and then it shows 2021. So the average for housing has been 2.8, but in 2021, it was 5.1. Look at healthcare, though, Tony. Healthcare, the average inflation is 4.7, above and beyond all others. It's the highest inflation category across the board. It's higher than transportation, food and beverage, and housing. However, it went down during 2021. The areas right now that are getting hit hardest by inflation are food and beverage and transportation. Look at transportation. Normally it's 2%. 2021, it was 21.4%. That is 10 times more inflation for transportation than normal. Okay. Oh, and you know why, right? I see Tony. Isn't it great when Tony doesn't have his microphone on? You can't hear him. He's
There
talking.
are a number of reasons, Dan. There are a number of reasons.
That's inflation for you.
Yeah. Transportation, number one inflation category, and that has to do with oil prices. That has to do with gasoline being so high, both for automobiles, for airplanes. So the question is, Tony, and food and beverage. Food and beverage hits everybody, right? Although a lot of people say when you're retired, you eat less, but I would say you go out more because you don't want to cook for one person
Yep.
or, just two.
So in early retirement, I think that happens. Yeah.
Right. But you would think healthcare would go up, but in fact, healthcare inflation is lowest right now. Transportation's where it's getting hit. And so the what they're suggesting is that as a percentage of household spending, older people spend less on food and transportation.
Yeah.
So they're not getting hit. And I say
As
they,
hard.
meaning retirees, aren't getting hit as hard as non-retirees, as people still working.
Unless they're really early in retirement and they're RVers.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, right.
Can you imagine, like, an RV costs $150 to fill up before this inflation?
I
I
have
mean, now
clients.
you got to have $300 just to fill the thing up. It's
Right.
good if you have one of those big RVs. So I see that affecting retirees, but that's a small portion. That's not everybody.
Right. It's bad when you have to swipe your card twice at a gas pump because they limit you out at $100 and you have to go again, right? I have clients that are retired that are RVers, and I have clients that are still working in our RVers, and they are feeling it. They're just doing less travel. So I'm not bought in, though. I do think healthcare costs are more for retirees, but then again, Medicare
Sure.
covers a lot. So that curve at the age 80, or it comes down to your own personal health.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to note that this inflation is really is hurting everyone, but I think that it's not hurting retirees as much. And I deal a lot with retirees, so I'm not saying, oh, they're great, everything's great. The issues they face is how do they get interest or growth on their investments, because they don't have time to take as much risk as those that are still working. So that's the balance they play.
Yeah.
So
inflation, increased taxation.
It's true. Oh, we got to find out who does that, Tony.
Yeah.
I think it's Alan Greenspan. It sounds like Alan Greenspan, or it sounds like the guy, the famous actor from Grumpy Old Man. Walter Matthau, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so conclusion. Spending in retirement is a personal situation, but in general, it goes down until about your 80s, or where you get unhealthy and need to increase more spending on healthcare. Then it creeps back up because of those healthcare related expenses. So what you need to do, and what the bottom line is, you need to have a retirement income plan that is adjustable. Don't just have a flat line spending. You have to factor in inflation, and you have to adjust for your lifestyle. So what does that mean? It means it's going to be intricate. It is the most difficult part of my job, is creating income plans. But that is fundamentally my job, is to create income plans. So I enjoy it. It's not easy, and it can be quite complex, especially when you have different health situations with couples. But hey, that's why we're here to do it. So factor that in, Tony. So this idea, rule of thumb, 80% of your income in retirement, get rid of that. We're going to say we don't know, but we're going to call it a curve, a smile.